Today I'm watching every 100th episode of Naruto with no context. What that means is that I've never watched Naruto before and I'm gonna watch the 100th episodes and try to figure out what's going on. Before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to Owina. He did this with every 100th episode of One Piece and that's where I got the idea from, but obviously I can't do One Piece because my entire channel is about One Piece. I've seen it before, but I've not watched Naruto. I didn't grow up watching it as a kid, and as an adult I haven't had time to watch it yet. I do want to watch it at some point, it just hasn't happened. And considering this video is about Naruto and not One Piece like my normal videos, if you guys do enjoy it, it would mean a lot to me if you drop a like. Okay, let's start with episode 1. Naruto! Let's go!
Next, Sasuke Uchiha.
Sasuke! I know that name, I've heard it a lot. Apparently people like him.
Naruto.
She knew the thing.
Didn't you think it was strange how they treated you? Like dirt. Like they hated you for just being alive. No!
Wow.
No! We're going out for ramen tonight.
So I feel like this guy's kind of like Naruto's father figure. Overall, episode 1 was actually really enjoyable. For the first episode of a show, it's actually really good. Sometimes I struggle to get into shows off of just the first episode alone. Like with One Piece, it took me about 30 episodes to get into it. But episode 1 of Naruto was really enjoyable. We had the whole ninja introduction, the training, the test, and of course we got introduced to Naruto and a little bit of his backstory. Like he doesn't really have a family. He has the nine-tailed fox inside of him. I assume we'd learn a lot more about that, but I don't know if I personally will watching every 100th episode. But it was pretty cool, and we also got to see some of the ninjutsu techniques. So first impressions off of this episode, I would actually continue the show. I wouldn't drop it after one episode, but right now I can't do that. Now we're gonna go ahead and jump to episode 100. Okay, I'm already confused. We're on episode 100. I don't have any idea what's going on.
Rock, paper, scissors. Are you nuts? That's what you
So who is this guy here?
I think Kakashi's just messing with
Kakashi is his name. Alright, I'm gonna be honest, episode 100 was really boring. I think I actually put it in 2 times speed to get through it at one point. This character was all about a guy named Lee and his training. In some sort of battle, Lee got injured because they're kind of alluding this whole episode that he's about to have this surgery and he has a 50-50 chance of living. So I think we missed a big battle at some point through these first 100 episodes, which wouldn't surprise me. That's a lot of episodes. Lee's trainer is a big part of this episode. His name is Might Guy, I think. He might be related to Lee. I didn't really catch that in this episode, but he looks kind of similar. They got a pretty similar haircut. And there were a couple other side characters with Lee, but I didn't really catch their names either. And I don't know that they're that important. But this episode did end off with a pretty big bang. The 5th Hokage was announced. I'm not going to act like I know exactly what that means, but I think the Hokage are the people that are on top of the cliff, or like their faces are carved into the cliff. And the 5th Hokage was Tsunade. So I feel like that's some pretty big news, but honestly I couldn't tell you. Moving on to the last episode that we're going to be watching from the original Naruto is episode 200. And this one is a filler episode. We do meet a few more characters. One of them is Shikamaru. I'm pretty sure this is one of Naruto's good friends slash ninja buddies, as well as a guy named Choji. And in this episode, they're trying to solve this big mystery. They're finding these hidden bombs all around the place, but it turns out all of these bombs are really old. Like they were placed over 30 years ago. And there's these 2 old advisors, which I think is what they called them, that find this bomb in this rundown part of town. So there's at least a decent plot in this episode, unlike episode 100. I didn't really like that episode. Well, it turns out these bombs were placed by a guy from Heat Devil Village. 30 years in the past, there was a war going on, and this guy secretly placed these to have a counterattack on the Hidden Leaf Village, but that counterattack never happened. So these bombs were just sitting there for 30 years, and the old guy who placed them, his name was Genya. Now, unfortunately, we get left on a cliffhanger. We don't know if Naruto actually saved the Hidden Leaf Village from exploding. I assume he did. That'd be a pretty big, tragedy if Hidden Leaf Village just exploded from 30-year-old bombs. And unfortunately, I have to go to episode 100 of Naruto Shippuden. Who was that guy?
This in the morning.
Naruto!
We'll have him. Like hell you will!
What's going on here? Oh, here's the lady from last episode. Unfortunately, episode 100 is also filler, but it was a pretty decent filler episode. We spend the entire episode inside of some fog, and we're with Naruto and part of his group. Kakashi is there. I say that like I really know who he is. I just know him because they said his name in the episode. But it is explained in this episode what Naruto's doing. He's looking for Sasuke. Now, I do know just from like TikTok and whatever that Sasuke is part of the Uchiha clan, I think is how you say it. And there's also Itachi, so I'm not sure what happened here, why Naruto's looking for him, but I just know he's looking for him. Tsunade the Hokage is also in this episode, so that's kind of a callback to episode 100 of Naruto. And real quick, I want to say, I don't know what happens from Naruto to Naruto Shippuden and why it's split up. I guess Naruto maybe is a couple years older. He doesn't look that much different, but that's got to be the case, right? Why would they split these up if it's not like a time skip or something? So anyway, something's up with this fog, and Naruto has some like illusions and sees some mirages inside of here. There's a big giant turtle. I'm pretty confused about the whole thing, but a lot of the episode was dialogue, so I was able to keep up a little bit. Wrapping up this episode, we do see some more of Lee training. Apparently, this guy's training a lot because out of the 4 episodes I've watched, he's been training in 2 of them. Or I'm just really unlucky that they put them at the 100th episodes. And one last character we were introduced to that I want to mention in case she's important is Sakura. We meet her in this episode, and I'm not sure if she's going to be important later on or if we'll see her again. So I just wanted to say that. Moving on to episode 200 of Naruto Shippuden, this might be the most important episode we've watched so far. In this episode, it was an entire meeting with all of the Hokage, so I assume these are some of the strongest people in the Naruto verse meeting, and I think it is mentioned that they don't meet very often, so something big was going down. But I want to track back a little bit because this episode does start with Naruto talking to one of these Hokage. He's a big blonde guy. I can't remember his name. Some of the names in this show are kind of confusing, but in this conversation they have, it's about Sasuke, and I think Sasuke killed some people or did something because he's on the run and Naruto's trying to find him, and the Hokage guy was talking about eliminating Sasuke, so there's some drama with him. I just don't know the context behind the drama. This conversation ends with Naruto bowing to this Kage guy, which is apparently something that doesn't happen often, and there was a name thrown out here, Madara Uchiha. Don't know who he is, but sounds pretty important. So yeah, this episode was a big conversation, mainly about stuff I didn't really understand, but it included the Kage Summit, and they talked a lot about Akatsukis, which I think is the enemy group from what I gathered, but I could be wrong. Moving on to episode 300, this might be the most action we've seen so far. It seems that they are in the midst of a war, which if from episode 200 is the Kage Summit, is like the start of the war, and we're in the midst of it at episode 300, that's one long war, and honestly, I would be pretty excited to watch that whole thing. I love action and war. But for context of this specific episode, we do have 2 of the Hokage fighting, the sand guy and the old short guy. And I think they're fighting 2 people that are on the same side as them, but have been taken over by somebody. Like, they have no control of their body. This clam guy, who apparently has mirages and whatnot, he says it multiple times that he doesn't want to fight, he's being forced to fight, and that he hates it. So I don't really know who's controlling them. My best guess is the Akatsuki. Our boy Naruto does show up in this episode to defeat this invisible guy, so Naruto's only in it for a couple minutes, and that's pretty much it. This whole episode was the clam guy and the old guy fighting. But that was episode 300. Episode 400 brings us to another filler episode, and it seems like whenever there's filler, there's a guy named Lee. I think the war that we are in episode 300 is over at this point. That'd be a really long war if it wasn't. We do see the Sand Hokage in this episode, so he seems to be a pretty prominent character in the series. But honestly, there's not a lot that happens in this episode. Lee tries to fight 6 people, and then some other shinobi come to help him. Not anybody that I really recognized from before. And basically all that happened in this episode was them talking in the desert, them talking about fighting in the desert, them fighting for maybe 1 minute in the desert, and then everybody leaving the desert. Just a lot of desert in this episode, not much to talk about. But we can talk about the last episode of Naruto Shippuden, episode 500. This is where it ends. I'm glad I did get to see the last episode, even though I don't really know much about what's going on. I can definitely tell at this point that Naruto is a lot older. He's hit some growth spurts than he was in episode 1 and episode 100. But this was a pretty cool episode. We do get a flashback to episode 1 which I thought was cool because it's something that I had actually watched at this point. And all this episode is about is Naruto's wedding. At the beginning of the episode, Naruto asks his former sensei, Iromake, I believe, to be his dad at the wedding, which I thought was really cool. And it shows that they had built a pretty good bond while he was a kid and just over the course of the series so far in general. And I feel like this has to be like the biggest wedding in history, at least in the Naruto verse. It seemed like everybody and their mother was attending this wedding. And I feel like there's a little secret going on here because at the wedding, this woman receives a note and then it flashes to this character, which I believe is Sasuke. Could be wrong. So he secretly was around the area when Naruto had his wedding, I guess. And also I want to point out in all these episodes, Itachi's name was not mentioned once. So I don't know when he shows up or where he is in the story at all. I just know that Itachi's a pretty popular character amongst people. So the fact that I just didn't hear about him once throughout this entire thing is pretty crazy to me. And one other detail I noticed is that there's more faces on the cliff than at the start of the series. I think there was 4 at the start. And there was like 6 on the cliff now. So there's definitely been some changes throughout the village. But that brings us to Boruto. Now there is something in the middle there. It's a spin-off, Rock Lee and his ninja pals. There's only 50 episodes, so I didn't watch any of that. Now we're in Boruto and we're going straight to episode 100. Now before I watched it, I was pretty certain that Boruto was Naruto's kid. And this was confirmed in this episode. He looks just like him. And a question I had while watching this is how often Naruto is actually seen inside of Boruto. Because in this episode, at least, we don't see Naruto, but I mean, there's 292 episodes or something like that. So I'm sure he's seen quite often. I just didn't know. This episode is about this guy named Jugo, and he's transforming into this weird bug-looking creature. And I feel like this is alluding to a bigger problem that's going to happen later on, because at the end of the episode there's a couple green-haired people who also transform into bugs and seem to be giving people this virus that makes them transform. So I assume that's something that we're kind of just at the start of. But honestly, I feel like I've said, but honestly, I don't know. A lot of times I just don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just trying to think out the side of the box here. These people from the land of rivers stopped Boruto from trying to help Jugo. They made him leave the area. And one thing I gotta say is I watched the dub, and Boruto's voice actor, I cannot stand it. I cannot stand Boruto's voice actor. His voice actor is the same as Naruto. It's a woman voicing like kind of a youngish boy. And I don't care if it's a man or a woman, but what it sounds like this person does every time they speak is when you see those TikToks of people being like, doing the finger movements. That's what it sounds like when they say their sentences as Boruto. I don't know how to explain it better than that. Every time I hear his voice, I cannot get this out of my head. Like, it sounds like that person's moving their finger around like that, speaking. Anyway, let's go to episode 200. Episode 200 was a pretty good episode, I thought, at least. Naruto is in this. We get Naruto and Boruto both. We cut back and forth from them to this other group of people and this blonde girl named Delta. This is like a villain group of people, I feel like, because Delta does not like Naruto. But I honestly didn't learn much from them this episode, so that's my best guess. Shikamaru is back in this episode, so that's a nice character that we've seen before. And then there's a new character, Kawaki, who asks Naruto to train him in this episode, and Naruto accepts, says that he will train him. So for like half the episode, they're doing their training, and then at the end of the episode, there's a 9-tailed fox that appears out of Naruto while he's sleeping and talks to Kawaki. This is the first time I'd seen anything like this, and I thought this was pretty cool. Alright, our last episode was episode 293. I think this is the last episode of Boruto for right now. And let me say, a lot happened in this one. It immediately starts off with Boruto looking like he's dead. Or he is dead, actually. Boruto had died. She just said Boruto's dead. Whoa. It's a pretty sick fight. Kawaki has improved a lot since we saw him in episode 200. Dang. Did Kawaki take him down? There was a huge hole in his chest. I didn't know how it got there at first, but then this fight with Kawaki and Code happened. So Kawaki's here, Naruto's here, he's standing over Boruto. He can't believe what he's seeing. His own son's dead in front of his eyes. He's going through it. But there's also this fight with Kawaki and Code. And Kawaki, apparently that training worked, because Kawaki was looking like a beast in this fight. He had a bunch of new powers. And the one thing I've struggled with is just figuring out who the villains are. Like, I know Code is obviously probably not a good guy here. But then there's this little kid and this woman who also seem to be working with code. And I just have no idea if they're a part of a group, if they're a family, like what's going on here? What's their motive? But while I was thinking about that, a huge bomb got dropped. Boruto was back alive. Somehow his wound had been healed. Oh my god. Wow. This episode's kind of crazy. It's then explained that he is a vessel for a spirit, and this spirit fed a tail to a monster and then revived Boruto somehow. I don't know how any of it works, but Boruto was back alive. But then another bomb is dropped, and it turns out that Kawaki is the one that killed Boruto because he feels like Boruto is a threat to Naruto, and Kawaki is gonna be protecting Naruto until the day he dies. Like, Boruto's Naruto's son. Why is Boruto a big threat to Naruto? I don't get it. There's just too much going on that I don't have context for. But at the end of the day, everybody was alive still, and it cuts back to the Hidden Leaf village, where it turns out it's not a village anymore. Hidden Leaf is literally an entire city. You got on top of the cliff, below the cliff, there's like freaking 20 Hokage on the cliff now, their faces. I think Naruto's face is on there as well. So Naruto's a Hokage. And at the very end, Kawaki does say why Boruto is a threat to Naruto, and it's because of a prophecy that's said. So apparently there's this prophecy. You know more than I do if you've watched Naruto. But then it just ends. And if that's how Boruto ends, there's a lot left on the table. That's how it ends? Is this really the last episode of Boruto? I don't really get it. I'm not gonna lie. I don't really get it. So I don't know what's going on. I guess that's how Boruto ends, at least the animated version. But that was watching every 100th episode of Naruto with no context. I feel like I actually learned a lot about the show, even though I only watched like 2% of it. I know quite a bit about Naruto. I know about Boruto. I know several of the side characters, but I did miss a lot of the big arcs and battles. This wasn't a One Piece video, but if you did enjoy it, it means a lot to me. If you liked the video, we're gonna be back to One Piece in the next video, so I'll see you guys then.